Hello and welcome to this English learning video. Today I will teach you a simple and powerful way to improve your English speaking. It is called the shadowing technique. What is shadowing? Shadowing means you listen to someone speak in English, then you repeat the words immediately after them. Try to copy the voice, the speed, and the feeling of the speaker. You become like their shadow. That's why it's called shadowing. This method helps you speak more clearly, understand English better, and feel more confident when talking. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Forgotten love, I am an old man, now my hair is white, and my hands are weak. I sit by the window every day, watching the trees outside. The wind moves the leaves softly, and I remember my past memories come like waves. Some make me smile, and some make me cry. I had a wife, her name was Sarah. She was kind and beautiful with a warm smile that made every day brighter. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I worked hard every day to give them a good life. I wanted them to have what I never did. My wife cared for the house, cooked meals, and helped the children with their schoolwork. Our home was full of laughter and love. Years passed, and the children grew up. They went to school, made friends, and started spending less time with us. I understood they needed to explore the world, but it still made me sad. Sarah would always tell me they will come back, they love us. I believed her. One day Sarah became sick. She stayed in bed for many weeks. I took care of her, cooked for her, and sat by her side. I told her stories to make her laugh, but she was 2 weeks. She looked at me and said, "Take care of the children, they need you." One night, she closed her eyes and never opened them again. My heart broke into pieces. The house became quiet and lonely. I hoped my children would stay with me and feel the silence, but they were busy with their own lives. They came to visit less and less. One day they sat with me and said, "You cannot stay alone. It's better for you to live in a home for old people." I wanted to say no, but I saw no other choice. My heart hurt, but I nodded and went with them. Now I sit here alone. The days are long and the nights are cold. I think of Sarah and the life we had together. I ask myself, did I fail as a father? Did I do something wrong? But there are no answers, only silence. This place is called the Golden Years home. It is clean and quiet. There are other old people here sitting in their chairs, lost in their thoughts. Some of them talk to me, but most of the time I sit alone. The nurses are kind, but they are busy. They bring me food, give me medicine, and sometimes smile at me. Every morning I wake up early. I sit by the window and watch the sunrise. The light paints the sky with colors, and for a moment I feel peace. Then the day begins, and I feel the emptiness again. I think of my children. Where are they? Are they happy? Do they think of me? I remember the times I carried them on my shoulders. We went to the park, played games, and laughed. I worked long hours to buy them new clothes and toys. I taught them to ride their bikes and helped them with their homework. My hands were tired, but my heart was full. They were my pride, my joy, my everything. But now they are far away. They call me sometimes, but their voices are hurried. "How are you, Dad?" they ask, and before I can answer they say, "We're busy. Take care." I understand life is hard, and they have their own families now, but still I wish they could visit more. One day a nurse gave me a notebook. She said, "Write your memories. It will help you feel better." At first I didn't know what to write. My hands shook as I held the pen, but then the words started to flow. I wrote about Sarah, her soft voice, her laughter. I wrote about my children, their first steps, their first words, their bright smiles. The notebook became my friend. Every night I wrote before I went To sleep, it felt like I was talking to someone, sharing my pain and my love. I hoped that one day my children would read it and understand how much I love them, but sometimes I wonder if they will ever read it. Maybe they are too busy to care. Maybe they will forget me just like they forgot to visit. These thoughts make my heart heavy, but I keep writing. It is the only thing I can do. The days in the home are all the same: breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 6. Between meals I sit by the window or in the garden. The garden is small, but it has flowers, roses, daisies, and tulips. Sometimes I watch the birds. They sing and fly freely, and I wonder if they feel joy or loneliness like me. One afternoon a young boy came to visit. He was the son of one of the nurses. He smiled at me and said, "Hi, Grandpa." His smile reminded me of my youngest son when he was little. The boy sat beside me and asked, "Do you have any stories?" I nodded and began to tell him about my childhood. I told him about the village where I grew up. There were green fields, tall trees, and a clear river where we used to swim. I told him about my best friend John and how we climbed trees and played hide and seek. As I spoke, the boy's eyes grew wide with excitement. For a moment, I felt alive again, sharing my memories with someone who listened. After he left, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was happy to talk to him, but it also reminded me of my family. I wondered if my grandchildren knew about me. Do they know how much I miss them? Do they know how much I want to hold them and tell them stories too? One evening, I asked the nurse if I could call my eldest son. She handed me the phone, and I dialed his number with shaking hands. He answered after a few rings. "Hello, Dad." He said, his voice distant. I told him I missed him and wanted to see him. He said, "I'll try to visit soon," but his words felt empty, like a promise he didn't mean to keep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling thinking. Between meals I sit by the window or in the garden. The garden is small, but it has flowers, roses, daisies, and tulips. Sometimes I watch the birds. They sing and fly freely, and I wonder if they feel joy or loneliness like me. One afternoon a young boy came to visit. He was the son of one of the nurses. He smiled at me and said, "Hi, Grandpa." His smile reminded me of my youngest son when he was little. The boy sat beside me and asked, "Do you have any stories?" I nodded and began to tell him about my childhood. I told him about the village where I grew up. There were green fields, tall trees, and a clear river where we used to swim. I told him about my best friend John and how we climbed trees and played hide and seek. As I spoke, the boy's eyes grew wide with excitement. For a moment, I felt alive again, sharing my memories with someone who listened. After he left, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was happy to talk to him, but it also reminded me of my family. I wondered if my grandchildren knew about me. Do they know how much I miss them? Do they know how much I want to hold them and tell them stories too? One evening, I asked the nurse if I could call my eldest son. She handed me the phone, and I dialed his number with shaking hands. He answered after a few rings. "Hello, Dad." He said, his voice distant. I told him I missed him and wanted to see him. He said, "I'll try to visit soon," but his words felt empty, like a promise he didn't mean to keep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling thinking. Youngest son, I reminded him of our fishing trips and how he laughed when he caught his first fish. I told him that I missed his jokes and his laughter, which used to fill the house with joy. When I finished writing, I carefully folded each letter and packed them in envelopes. I asked the nurse to mail them for me. She smiled kindly and said, "Of course, Mr. Carter, I'll send them right away." For the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of hope the next morning. I went to the garden, the air was fresh, and the flowers swayed gently in the breeze. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes, imagining my children reading the letters. I pictured their faces, perhaps touched by my words, deciding to come and visit me. But days passed, and there was no response, no phone calls, no letters, no visits. My heart ached, but I told myself to be patient. They're busy. I thought maybe the letters will remind them. I held on to this thought like a lifeline, trying to keep my hope alive. That evening, as I sat by the window, the young boy who had visited me before came back. He brought a small drawing. He had made a picture of me sitting under a tree with a big smile. "This is for you," he said, handing me the paper. My eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. The boy's kindness warmed my heart. It reminded me that even in the darkest moments there is still light, and though my own children were far away, this little boy gave me a reason to smile, even if just for a while. One morning, as I sat by the window, the nurse walked in with a letter in her hand. "Mr. Carter," she said with a smile, "you have mail." My heart raced as she handed me the envelope. The handwriting was familiar. It was from my eldest son. My hands trembled as I opened it, my eyes scanning each word. He apologized for not visiting sooner. He wrote about his busy life, his demanding job, and how he often thought about me, but never found the time. He promised to visit soon and bring his children, my grandchildren, whom I hadn't seen in years. My eyes filled with tears, both of relief and longing. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of happiness. I read the letter again and again, memorizing every word. I showed it to the nurse, who smiled and said, "See, they do care, Mr. Carter." Her words gave me hope, but deep down I wondered if his visit would truly happen. A week passed, and then another. Each day I looked out of the window hoping to see his car. The other residents noticed my excitement and asked me about it. "My son is coming," I told them with a proud smile. Their kind words encouraged me, but as the days turned into weeks, doubt began to creep in. One afternoon, I decided to write again. This time, I wrote to my daughter. I told her about the letter I had received from her brother and how much it had lifted my spirits. I reminded her of the times we used to sit together and talk about her dreams. "I miss our conversations," I wrote, hoping my words would reach her heart. I gave the letter to the nurse to send, and once again I waited. The waiting was hard, but the memory of my son's letter kept me going. I spent my days in the garden talking to the young boy who often visited. He told me about school, his favorite games, and his dreams of becoming an artist. One day the boy brought me another drawing, a picture of a family standing together under a tree. "This is your family," he said, pointing to the figures. His innocent gesture brought tears to my eyes. I thanked him and placed the drawing next to the letter from my son. The days were still lonely, but the small moments of kindness from the boy and the promise of a visit from my son gave me a reason to hold on. I thought of my wife and how she would have encouraged me to stay strong. "They will come," I whispered to myself each night before going to bed. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about my life, my family, and the love I had given them. "Maybe they will understand one day," I thought, and with that I closed my eyes, holding on to the hope that tomorrow might bring something new. One bright morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. It wasn't the usual sound of the nurses or the staff. My heart began to race. I sat up in my bed, listening carefully. Could it be him? Could it be my son? The door opened slowly, and there he was, my eldest son, standing tall but looking hesitant behind him were two little children holding his hands. My eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. He walked closer, his face a mix of guilt and warmth. Daddy said softly, "I'm here." I opened my arms, and he leaned down to hug me. It was the first time in years that I had felt his embrace. His children, my grandchildren, smiled shyly at me. "These are Emma and Liam," he said, introducing them. "They've been excited to meet you." I looked at the children and smiled. "Hello, Emma." "Hello, Liam," I said. They giggled and handed me drawings they had made. One was a picture of a house with a garden, and the other was of an old man smiling. "This is you, Grandpa," Liam said proudly. The room suddenly felt alive with their presence. My son sat beside me, and we talked for hours. He told me about his work, his family, and how much he missed the old days. I listened, cherishing every word. I told him about the home, the kind nurses, and the little boy who often visited me before they left. My son promised to come again soon. "This time, I mean it, Dad," he said firmly. His words filled me with hope. I watched as they walked out of the door, feeling a mix of joy and sadness. The visit was brief, but it meant everything to me. A few days later, my daughter came to see me. She had received my letter and decided to visit. She hugged me tightly, and we spent hours talking about her life, her struggles, and her dreams. She apologized for staying away for so long and promised to visit more often. For the first time in years, I felt surrounded by love. My children were finally beginning to understand. They saw me not as a burden, but as a father who had given them everything he could. Their visits became more frequent, and the emptiness in my heart began to fade. The young boy in the home continued to visit me, bringing his cheerful stories and drawings. One day, he said, "You look happier now, Mr. Carter." I smiled and nodded. "Yes, I am," I replied. As the days turned into months, I realized that life was not about how much you give, but about the moments you share with those you love. My heart, once heavy with loneliness, was now filled with gratitude. I still missed my wife deeply, but I knew she would be proud. Her love had taught me to keep going even in the hardest times. And now, as I sat in the garden with my children and grandchildren by my side, I felt at peace. Great job today. Make sure to review what you've learned and come back for more.